Hey there, fabulous moms. Are you ready to stay informed and empowered to make positive impact for your family's future? Well, today I have a really special treat for you on today's episode. An inspiring conversation with Representative Pam Altendorf from the Minnesota House of Representatives. Pam is an incredibly dedicated public servant focused on less government and more freedom. Get ready to learn about the issues that matter most to moms and families here in Minnesota. She's going to break it down into relatable chunks that you can truly digest and understand. You do not want to miss this episode. It is time to take charge and make a difference. Let's dive right in. Hi, I'm Jenna, and I'm always rambling. Just ask my husband. I have a great family and a pretty cool life, but I'm a recovered alcoholic. That's hard to say, but my goal is to inspire and educate to help others hopefully find life beyond an addiction. I'm all things: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Getting healthy, momming, and politics. Get offended easily? You better stop listening. There is no point in wasting that Botox by stressing yourself out listening to a podcast. Welcome to Ramblings of an Addict with Jenna. Today's episode brought to you by products and services I'm thoroughly addicted to. Are you a dedicated listener to Ramblings of an Addict? Then this is the space you absolutely need to join. Introducing the Grit and Grace Rambling Collective, a community designed specifically for fans of the podcast, or rather, even women who listen and think, wow, this is information that I totally can relate to. We understand your passion for personal growth, empowerment, and faith in Jesus, and we are here to take it to the next level. Join our collective of like-minded individuals who are ready to dive deeper into the topics discussed on this show, from personal transformation to engaging with societal issues. We will provide support, coaching, and guidance that you're going to need to truly make a positive impact. Together, let's continue the conversation, share insights, and inspire each other to live a life filled with grit, grace, and a whole lot of love. Do not miss out on this opportunity to connect with fellow listeners, amplify your journey of growth, and be part of a community that values the power of personal and collective well-being. Join the Grit and Grace Rambling Collective today, and let's create a space where we can thrive together. Check gritgraceglow.com for more information, and you can easily join us in the collective ASAP. All right, welcome to the podcast, everyone. I am so incredibly happy as we jump into this one. Number one, that you are a person obviously saying, yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about what's going on in Minnesota. I want to be a little bit more in the know because right now it's been a whirlwind. So I am beyond thrilled today to have a very special guest joining us. Today we have Representative Pam Altendorf, who represents the District of Red Wing, which is House District 20A here in Minnesota. Pam is an incredibly dedicated public servant and an incredibly strong advocate for less government here in Minnesota as we try to focus on more freedom. She is married and she has 5 kids. Pam's passion is really just making sure that she is serving her community. During her campaign, she gathered a ton of widespread support, receiving endorsements from the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, Child Protection League, Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, and the National Rifle Association. Having just now completed her first legislative session here in Minnesota as a freshman, Representative Pam has committed herself to making a positive impact for her constituents, and it's been incredibly admirable watching her. I was actually really struck by how genuine she is, because back during session towards the end of it, I actually caught a live video that she put out. She was speaking directly to her constituents. I think it was like roughly 1 a.m. She's sitting in her garage, just pouring out her heart to her people, letting them know really what's going on. It was incredibly authentic, and it just showed the amount of dedication she has for the Minnesota people. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I am excited for this conversation myself, and I know you are all going to love it. So with that, I want to welcome you, Representative. Thank you so much for jumping on with us today.
Hi, Jenna. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely. So as I said, married, mom of 5, you're busy with the legislative session, but tell me and my audience, just tell us a little bit more about who you are.
Okay. I grew up on a farm. It was actually a poultry farm in LeSueur, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And there was 6 siblings in my family. I attribute that farm life. When we had the laying hens, we had 50,000 chickens. We would have to pack eggs twice a day.
Wow.
So people are very familiar with dairy farmers have to milk cows twice a day, but we were doing that with chickens basically. So I just attribute my hard work and values and all of that from the small town I grew up on. And married, met my husband at the University of Minnesota. We have 5 children from ages from 30 to our youngest is 18, and he just graduated from high school. So
awesome.
I guess this fall will be empty nesters. And then I also have a Norwex business that I started in 2008. And the reason why I started that business, not everybody knows that story, but I had kidney cancer. And I learned about Norwex, and I was just very, very passionate about removing toxic chemicals and, having those out of my home. And so I really was very fortunate. I got in at a ground level type position, and I really worked hard and grew that business.
Awesome. I did not know that story. And I mean, as a health coach, hearing that just it pulls at my heartstrings. So kudos to you for number 1, building a business, but number 2, fighting hard against cancer and saying, hey, what can I do to kind of take charge of my health?
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely something at the time. Yeah. Again, God has made my life very interesting, and so many things have happened at the time that I fought through, and, later really turns into a blessing, or it just continues to grow me as a person. Absolutely.
God has that plan laid out for us, and sometimes we sit back and think, what is going on? But he truly is the master planner. It's amazing how it comes together.
I agree. And it's just always amazing for me to look back and go, oh, that happened because of this. You can kind of see it happening down the road. It's really awesome.
Absolutely. True puzzle pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So busy woman, mom, wife. I mean, you are no stranger to busy. I didn't know the chicken farmer lifestyle before. So, I mean, busy is kind of your MO. But in addition, raising up all those kids, building a business, which is absolutely incredible, and now adding Minnesota House of Representatives to the list. So tell me, and we touched on it a little bit, right? God is a master planner, but tell me a little bit about what things did God work into your life to create this calling for politics?
I think I'm actually very similar to so many people in Minnesota and actually around the United States could probably relate to my story. And it was in 2020. It was when COVID hit. And I will tell you, I was not paying much attention to politics before that. I was busy with my life, busy with kids. And during COVID, especially here in Minnesota, watching our, governor totally dictate shutting down small businesses, like actually saying to someone, you can't work, but a Target or a Menards, they can work.
Yeah.
Telling people that they could not go to church and worship.
Yeah.
Some of it, I'm sure all of this is going to come back in history and there'll be movies made of some of these things. But, think of those times. I mean, we had loved ones die and people were not allowed to go to their funerals. I mean, it was a sad time. So I was very frustrated during 2020, and being in sales, what's interesting is I really tried to stay out of politics. I think most business people do.
Yeah.
Knowing that 50% of your, clientele is going to think one way and 50% is going to think another way.
Exactly.
Yeah. When COVID started to hit, and I really was recognizing very strongly that the media, that they were using fear tactics, to control the public.
Yeah.
And you can, and hopefully more and more people are starting to see this. So it's not that COVID wasn't real. I'm not saying that. It is the manipulation that the government and the media was doing on people. And, from watching the news, and the background would be purple, and there would be a ticker on, how many people died. All of that was to drive fear. Yeah. And so for the first time, I think in the spring of 2020, I really just was like, I need to be a voice here, like in the darkness. And because my background with Norwex and wanting to be healthy, I first just started speaking out about, that there's healthy things that we can do to stay healthy. And it shouldn't have been controversial, but it was.
Oh, very much. I agree.
So that was 2020. In 2021, I just realized, you know what? I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that thinks this way. And in January of 2021, I started a group called the Minnesota Patriots, just locally, because people who were thinking like I was needed support from other people.
I agree.
We started meeting weekly. I mean, every week. We almost never missed a week, and that support group really helped us get through COVID. And that was, I would say, what started me even more down the political path, because we would do things like go to school board meetings, write letters to state legislators. So, it was really a path. It was just first being frustrated, and then moving into action and trying to get involved.
Absolutely. And I think you nailed it. You said a lot of people across Minnesota, probably across the United States. And exactly, that's, my story to a T. 2020, up until that point, I could have cared less about politics. I barely ever paid attention. I was a hit or miss voter. And 2020 hit. And I think as a mom, especially, it was like, oh, okay, my eyes were forced open at that point. You can't be living in a society where these fear tactics are driving everything. So kudos to you for getting, the Minnesota Patriots group up and going and just diving in. And exactly, more puzzle pieces God put in play for you.
Yeah. Thanks. And honestly, I was trying to, when I would be posting like in 2020, I was trying to be encouraging, because all you would hear is fear. And I was trying to be a voice of reason and, hey, God is not about fear, just really trying to be positive, I guess. But it was interesting how political it could be when you're just trying to be a voice of, of positivity and trying to encourage people in a very, very dark time.
Yep, exactly. Bringing some, peace and some balance, and you were looked at like complete evil.
Right.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so 2020 was, the gates opened for you, and we know, thankfully, God's path allowed you to run for office. You were victorious, which was amazing. And both of us, coming from the side of the GOP, I'm assuming, have very similar thoughts to the trifecta this last session here in Minnesota. But you were someone sitting on that House floor every single day. I had the privilege of going down there a couple times, getting to watch you guys at work, but I would love to hear from you directly how the experience really impacted you. Number one, yes, as a representative, but also more importantly, how it impacted you as a Minnesotan, and most importantly, I think, as a mom. What was going on this last session?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jenna. People say it's a trifecta, and it is, but I almost feel like we need to start changing what we even say about that. Is what happened was this was like complete tyrannical control. This was complete, unbridled, unchecked power that our Minnesota government took on. And our government is supposed to have checks and balances.
Agreed.
That's how governments are intended. And that simply did not happen this year in 2023 during the legislative session. Now, I mean, they had, once they knew that they had the Senate, the House, and the governor, which is obviously the trifecta. But on top of that, they have all of the major state seats, like, Keith Ellison and Steve Simon. And so there's nobody to go to try to help keep things in check.
Yeah.
And another problem in Minnesota, which, I try to call out, and I don't know. I'm just a lone voice. I think people understand this, but it is the Minnesota media. And they are really to blame.
Agreed.
Because if we had one-sided government, which we did, so whatever we want to call it, complete control of the Democrat Party, all right?
Yeah.
They still should have a watchdog media, people who are considered, like investigative journalism.
Yep.
People who are there for the people of Minnesota in media that wants to bring the truth to Minnesotans.
Correct.
And we do not have that in Minnesota. And it is such a shame because, again, even though they have complete control, they were allowed to basically not follow rules, to skip processes. And if it was flipped, where the Republicans had complete control and we were doing some of the tactics that they were doing, I believe 100% we would have been called out by the media.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And actually, that's a good thing. I would advocate for that.
Yeah.
Because if the media calls you out, what happens is it keeps you in check. It keeps you in control.
Yeah.
When the media refuses to do their job, which happened in 2023, then they get more prideful, more ambitious, because there's nothing stopping them. And they're it's like the burglar in the night. Like, no one's even aware of what's happening in Minnesota because it's not being reported. So, watching it, I knew it was going to be bad. And I should just kind of say to any of your listeners, just kind of give you a little background, but, so the governor is a Democrat, Waltz, and then, the House is 70 Democrats, 64 Republicans, and the Senate is just one seat. It's 34 Democrats, 33 Republicans. But at the end of the day, because not very many, but every once in a while, people will say, "Well, why didn't you stop some of this agenda?" And the truth is, we didn't have the votes; we couldn't do it. But if the public gets more involved, if the public is aware of what's happening, and they put pressure on the Democrats, the Democrats don't like that. They don't like feeling that pressure. And again, because they're not used to it, because the media is not doing their job. So that's the one thing, that I would like to say, even moving forward, is the more pressure coming from the Minnesota citizens, the more awareness, it actually can slow down their agenda a little bit. I mean, that's what I saw, was a couple of different examples, was when the public got involved, they slowed down a little bit. Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically with the Uber thing. When people started to speak up, I mean, they kind of were forced into, wait a minute, this isn't going to go through. Same with the mail, right? When the mail got involved. And, once they had pushback, they're like, oh, wait a minute, we can't push all of our, I'm going to be blunt, right? Their craziness because people are paying attention.
Yeah, and there was another one earlier on. It was in the education bill. They were going to start requiring some testing of homeschool families to be sent to the state. Yeah. And to one of the committee hearings, we had about 100 homeschool family, it was adults and kids, and they peacefully, protested. They had signs, but there was about 100 of them. And that was the first time during the session that I saw them strip something out of the bill. Okay. And they did not like it. That number one, that the public was aware, and that number two, they actually showed up and put pressure on them.
which is our job. I mean,
Right.
they're there representing us, just like you're down there representing Red Wing. And absolutely. And that's what more Minnesotans need to do is it easy? No. I can even say for myself, was it easy having to pack up my 3-year-old and head down to the Capitol for some of those different things? Not always. Like some days I much rather sat at home in my pajama pants playing and watching Blue's Clues or something, right? But you got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially right now, Jenna, I mean, thank you for going down there and being a voice, and that is important. And again, what I am seeing is just, first of all, is so many people are unaware, but then the people that are starting to take that step to become educated, to really look into this, it is moving them into, it's kind of like a process,
Yes.
Like first you get educated, then you get like frustrated or angry.
Yeah.
And then you do have to move into action. And just like you went to the Capitol, at some point, there is no choice. As the people of Minnesota, we have to move into action.
I agree. 1,000%.
Mm-hmm.
That's the piece that's missing. And, I think I just want to tag back on that one piece you're talking about with the media. I mean, I agree. The media is definitely doing a huge disservice. And I'm grateful that there's, smaller media companies and even like some one-off reporters here and there that, their voices aren't extremely loud yet. And I just keep praying that their voices, they soon find megaphones, because that's exactly what we need.
Yep. And I think just someone told me this, actually. She was a journalist from Chicago, way back. It was like between 2016 and 2020. And, she admitted she grew up as a very liberal Democrat, grew up in Chicago. She was a journalist. And
yep.
She just said at some point, God kind of revealed the truth to her. And she really encouraged me, look for independent journalists.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, because the big, media outlets, the news that are showing, they have sponsors. They have people that are paying them, whether it's Pfizer. Well, you can't speak against a vaccine if Pfizer is giving you millions of dollars. I mean, that just makes sense, right?
You can't talk bad about your stakeholders. Yeah.
Right. So I would just, anyone that's listening, I would just encourage you. Well, God gave us discernment. So I don't not listen to, I actually listen to a wide variety of things.
Yeah.
But use your discernment. And I think over time, you start to find out more and more who you can actually trust.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are, I believe, independent journalists.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, jumping into this next question here. So you kind of led into it a little bit talking about the education committee, but I know that, so you're serving on 3 committees. You're on the climate and energy, finance and policy, elections, finance, and policy education, finance. And I might have said some of those incorrectly. If I did, let me know.
No, I think that was right.
Perfect. But I wanted to specifically tap back into the education one for a second, because a lot of moms are listening to this podcast, and I was wondering, your perspective with what's going on in the schools. Can you tell us a little bit more about the experience and your perspective on where the Minnesota schools are heading?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I was assigned to the education committee, and it was kind of funny. So we have all these committees, and I think we're supposed to put our top 10 or something like that down. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. I did not put education in my top 10.
Crazy. Okay.
Not because I'm not passionate about it and I don't care about it, because I deeply do. But I'm going to tell you why. I did not put education in my top 10 because I just felt, with them having complete control, that it was just going to be so frustrating to watch.
Understandable. And I agree. It probably, yeah.
And maybe that's wrong of me, but anyway, so this is just kind of ironic, but I, Pam Altendorf, did not really choose to be on the education committee, but it's another one of those things that God said, yes.
He made sure you were there.
So anyways, but once I got on it, I'm not trying to be over dramatic, but I don't mean to be over dramatic, but I was worried about this committee, and I don't know. I just felt like I wasn't going to be able to have an impact. I don't know why.
Okay.
Anyways, so we go to the committee, and here we are in the state of Minnesota. And I don't know how much your listeners are aware, or if you talked about this in the past.
A little bit.
But as a state, we are really suffering with academics.
Yeah.
We have 50% of our children not reading at grade level.
Ah, that's heartbreaking.
It is, and it's so sad, Jenna, because, this was our future.
Yes, exactly.
And then I literally think about these kids, and I'm like, think about this. If we send them through their public school education process and they can't read, well, reading, turns into lifelong learning. You can't learn in your life if you can't read.
Yeah.
And so you take that a step farther, and what kind of jobs, can children get if they can't read at grade level? What kind of future are we setting them up for? And there's no other way to describe it, but this is a crisis of our state right now.
I agree.
We can't, there's just no other way to put this. So anyways, I knew this going into the education committee, that we were really failing in the academics.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure, here I am. I thought for sure, well, we're going to address this in the education committee.
You'd hope so.
Right?
You'd hope so.
This should be our number one priority, our children and
Absolutely.
The future.
Education,
okay.
Right?
Yeah. So I'm sitting in the committee, and by week 2, one of the very first bills that came to my committee was the bill about that the state of Minnesota all of the public schools would have to pay to have menstruation products in the boys and the girls' bathrooms.
Oh, yes. I remember when that one hit.
But that was week 2.
Oh, my. And reading had not been addressed yet.
No. But I'm thinking, I literally was very confused at this point. I'm a new legislator, and I'm thinking, how is this? I don't know. Did you see it on any campaign literature that when the Democrats were running, did they run on, we're going to put tampons in the boys' bathrooms? Did you see that?
Nope, sure didn't. But I did see, fixing education, which parents were hoping for.
Right. So that's why I was sitting there on week 2. And if you got a view of my face, because I'm very, very bad at hiding my face expressions, I literally was like, what is happening?
Right.
How is this your top priority?
Yeah.
How is putting tampons in boys' bathrooms your top priority that it's coming through my committee in week 2?
Oh, my Lana.
Anyways, I don't mean to but it went, so that was the first priority. But then it just went week after week. And every week I kept on thinking well, certainly we're going to talk about academics this week.
I would hope. Yeah.
No, then the next week I would be because by the way, if the Democrats are in control, which they are, they get to set the agenda. They pick the bills that are coming. So being on the Republican side, I have absolutely no control of the agenda or what bills are being heard. But I still felt hopeful that the Democrats were going to eventually talk about, academics and education.
Yeah, exactly.
No. So I think the first time we finally started, we did have one of the Democrat legislators talked about academics and reading was, I believe, in March or April. I think it was April. I'm not exaggerating.
So 3 months in.
Yes.
Oh, my Lana.
So you're literally sitting here none of this makes sense. And I just want to say to the parents, I know so many people just detest politics. I get it,
Yep.
Because, first of all, we have busy lives. We have kids.
Exactly.
we have to make dinner. We're running around to sports. I get it. We're busy people. And people don't like, the bickering or whatever. But I'm going to just challenge your listeners to just watch what people do, not what they say.
Yes.
Now, for education, because it's a top priority to me, and it should be a top priority to every Minnesotan. We've got to prioritize our children. Okay.
Yep.
So I just want to paint a picture. Even though you saw them say, they ran on fully funding education, right?
Yes.
Okay. So watch what they do, not what they say. And we walked into this, and I'm just going to speak in facts, so jot this down. But we walked into the session with an unprecedented $17.5 billion surplus.
Yep.
Billion.
Oh, yeah, with a B.
Yes. Just money that you can't comprehend.
Agree.
At the end of the session, some of your listeners might have seen, headlines in newspapers that said, largest increase to education ever. Okay.
Yep.
So again, that is a fact. All right.
Yep.
So here's the facts. Let's write them down. Walked into the session with a $17.5 billion surplus. They said that they were going to fully fund education.
Yep.
They spent the largest amount of money towards education ever. They increased the budget $2.2 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So they did spend the largest ever. That was true.
Yeah.
But what is left out of the headlines is that they spent the most towards education. And at the end of the day, our schools are not fully funded. And I am hearing from being on the Education Finance Committee.
Yeah.
I am hearing from superintendents, school board members, principals, teachers who are very concerned because all of the mandates that the Democrats pushed through, there was 65 new mandates.
Okay.
That once the schools are forced, mandates are things that are now law. That means the schools don't have a choice. They have to implement these.
Yep.
So with these 65 new mandates, one of them being what I'd already mentioned was, menstruation products in the boys' and girls' bathroom.
Yep.
With those 65 new mandates, even with increasing our funding, $2.2 billion, many schools are looking at a deficit. and I want people to really wrap their brain around what I just said.
Right.
Because they had the largest surplus ever, $17.5 billion. What they did is they increased government, they increased the bureaucracy, they increased, so for the Minnesota Department of Ed, they added a whole bunch of new full-time positions. So more top-level government.
Yep. And
more money, but not putting the money to where we want it, not putting money locally to actually helping our children and, in my opinion, improving academics and improving the very detrimental crisis situation that we're having right now in Minnesota.
Exactly. Those dollars should have been going to the students to help improve their actual academics and their scores.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're looking at, they're saying, fully funded. And now in truth, the schools are less funded than they were before all those new mandates went through.
Exactly. And it's mind-boggling. I get it.
Right.
But to your listeners, again, $17.5 billion. If they would have but they can't control themselves. So because they had ultimate power, they were like, well, I'm going to make this rule, and I'm going to make this rule, and I'm going to make this rule, and I'm going to force all of you schools to obey me. It's like a tyrannical government.
Yep.
If they would have just took their $17.5 billion, they could have paid off, the problems that that schools were behind, and just helped get our schools back to a normal without increasing all of these mandates and burdens that are placed on our educators. I mean, it's a disaster.
That's nuts. So you touched on a couple, but I'm just, sharing with the audience here. I know menstrual products in both gender bathrooms now, the lunches and the paid breakfasts, and and you said more Department of Ed employees. What were some of the other mandates that they put through that you sat there, I'm sure, and shook your head thinking, no money to these kids?
Yeah, one of them, like I had just talked to, Red Wing is in my district, and one of them, for example, is having a bathroom, that is it's not sex associated.
Yep.
But like I believe, and I could be wrong, sorry, but I can't believe it's like every floor of the building has to have one, or if it's just one. But anyways, I had talked to someone on the Red Wing school board, and basically, just to give you an idea, okay, so this is a new mandate that you have to provide this bathroom. Now, the Red Wing school, they obviously didn't have one. And so schools have budgets, for like, let's say in the future, Red Wing needs to put a new roof, so they need whatever money for that.
Yep.
But now they're going to be dipping into their funds that would be going to other needed repairs to basically build a bathroom that possibly they already have in another area of the school, but to meet this mandate, and then that's a huge expense. I mean, we're talking $50,000, or we're talking big money.
Yeah.
And it's like, and again, it's not that I don't have compassion for kids. It's not that, but it's them saying, you have to do this and not giving local control to the schools. I would believe my schools, like Red Wing is a larger school, Goodhue is a smaller school.
Yep.
But it's like, I would trust the school board and the administration to be able to do things that best fits their school and their needs. And that's where I just differ. Now, one thing I want to talk about, because you brought up the school lunches.
Yeah.
And on the face, so again, remember what I said. Watch what they do, not what they say.
Right.
Okay, so they ran, and oh my gosh, they try to pull on the heartstrings and make you feel so emotional about feeding kids. And we're going to provide these school lunches. And here's the thing, that was a mandate. So again, people don't understand this. So once it's in law, the schools cannot undo this unless it's undone at a legislative level. Now, so again, as they had these headlines and they're trying to be like, well, we care about kids. Well, they're putting, it was $250 million towards feeding children. Now, this includes everybody.
Right.
So there's parents that don't need their lunches to be paid for and don't want them to be paid for.
Right.
Yet, this is a mandate. So once this becomes an unfunded mandate, the schools are going to have to shuffle around their budgets
to pay for all those.
Yes.
Oh, Milana.
But the public gets so drawn in on the emotion and the feelings.
Yep.
And then what will happen is in 2 years from now, we're going to literally have schools cutting teachers. And I'm not joking you.
Oh, I'm sure. I used to work in the schools.
Cutting teachers because they have to provide free lunches.
Right. Oh,
and so
word.
Explain to me how that is, helping our children.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean,
no.
Oh, okay. I think we could sit on that question all day.
Yeah.
So we're going to move into this next one. So you've been chatting with Minnesotans across the state. I've seen you in plenty of districts that were not Red Wing area. I personally was even encouraging people head to one of the larger town halls that you and a couple of the other legislators were doing. But tell me, as you're meeting with people across the state, what are you hearing from the mouths of Minnesotans?
That's a great question. I think, again, it goes back to, we already talked a little bit, is so many people were completely unaware that they feel blindsided. When they first hear, it's almost like this look of, no, that can't be true. They almost don't want to believe you, but then you show them the proof, and there is a lot of that happening. So that to me is frustrating. I believe I'm in the camp that there are things that pass this legislative session that even if the Democrats knew and understood, and I'm going to say as high as 70 to 80% of Democrats would have said no. So we have right now in Minnesota just a very radical group of people running the Democrat Party. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that Minnesota needs to wake up to is, I know, I grew up, by the way, my family was a Democrat. I had mentioned we grew up as, on a farm.
Yeah.
And at some point, I just really realized that my priorities is more about freedoms and about giving control to people, and that I don't believe government should have so much control. That's really where I think I did a switch as an adult.
Yeah.
But what Minnesotans need to wake up is this is not your Democrat Party of 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Not at all.
No.
Our grandpas would be rolling around in their graves.
Oh, yes. So we have a party that I believe has been hijacked by a bunch of radicals, and some of them openly will say they're socialists or communists. I mean, yeah, they openly say that. So if they say it, believe them.
Right. Exactly. They're not just saying it for funsies.
No. So I guess my thing is, what is the Minnesotan saying? And what a little encouragement for your listeners, if you think this has gone too far, is I have heard from, people that say they're moderate Democrats or independents, and they are saying, I didn't want this. This was too far. Yeah. And so even though this is I believe a bad time in Minnesota, I think what it's doing is it is waking up that middle ground, and people are saying, this is too far. We don't want this. Yep,
exactly. I mean, everything in life, sometimes we just need to look for the silver lining, and I agree. I think people are saying, wait a minute, what did they just do? And pulling for that middle is exactly what we need to do.
Right. And that's what I think, and I really, really believe 80% of us all want the same thing. So what I want Minnesotans to think about is, what happens in politics is they run emotional issues to divide us.
Yes.
And we really have to try to keep our emotions a little bit on the shelf, and really get back to, because I feel like we're very divided, and I also think it's very purposeful, because when we're divided, we're fighting. Yep. But if we could just step back from some of that emotion and some of that fear, so many of us, 80% of us, all want the same thing.
Yeah.
And we just really need to get back to that, to bringing people to the table and in not doing the extreme things.
Absolutely. Okay, so as you head into next session, right? You probably still have, moments that you're like, oh my goodness, I can't even imagine, next session already. But actually having fun here for a moment. I'm hoping, right? You're out there, you're doing the town hall thing. I know I've seen tons of you guys, different legislators at different meetings, things of that sort. So you're still busy, but tell the listeners a little bit about any R&R that you're at least, hopefully, fingers crossed, able to give yourself this summer.
Well, Jenna, it's very funny because I think some people relax a lot better than I do.
A mom of 5, you don't know how to relax? What?
No, but no, I would say one fun thing was just last week, we're actually expecting our first grandchild.
Congrats.
Thank you. My second son and his wife, they're expecting in September. So we had a really fun, it was like a diaper baby shower party for them. And that was a lot of fun.
Very awesome. And like you said too, right? Your baby graduated, so I'm sure you had some fun with that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we had a graduation, and we did do a family cabin a thing last week, but again, my husband and I I'm sorry, I know we probably make people crazy, but we're always on the move. So it was like when we were at the cabin, we were like fixing things.
I can relate. I can absolutely get it. Well, cool. I'm glad you're able to get a little R&R, and it sounds like most of the R&R revolves around family, which, that's your bread and butter, right? That's your fuel. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, as you're heading into this next session next year, right? So any personal focuses that you are hoping to accomplish, and also at the same time, any things that you're kind of on the watch for coming from across the aisle?
Yeah. So nothing has changed. There's still going to be an ultimate control.
Correct.
And sometimes I think, like, my gosh, look at what they drummed up in a 2-month period, from November to January.
Yeah.
And when they came into session, I mean, they had their ducks in the row, and they were just, they were going just full speed, to get this agenda pushed through.
Yeah.
What I have thought from the beginning, okay, because when I ran and what I heard at the doors is a lot of people were frustrated with Waltz. A lot of people were frustrated with how Minneapolis burned for days and it wasn't stopped. And people were frustrated how he handled COVID. And so when I was outdoor knocking, I really went into November thinking that we were going to be in the majority. I did.
Yep. I think a lot of us did.
A lot of Republicans did.
Yep.
So when that didn't happen, I was, you have your little depression period for whatever. My husband gave me, I think, 24 hours.
He gave you parameters.
It was like after the second day, he was like, okay, so you lost everything. And he's like, so what are you going to do about it?
Especially because you didn't lose. You had some focus to get going.
Right. I'm like, okay, well, that's really harsh, but all right. So I was like, what I have to offer is I'm in sales. I'm in marketing. And I'm like, I just need to be a voice. I just need to be a voice. And if that's what I can offer, that's what I will offer. And so during the session, I know you mentioned I'd done that live video at night. And when I was driving home, it was a particularly long session. And when I was driving home, I just heard this voice in my head, and it was like, you need to go live. You need to tell people what's happening. You need to tell people what's happening. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit in my van. I'm just going to tell people what's happening. Because again, you're not hearing this from the media.
Not at all.
So, what I am planning on doing, I'm going to actually be doing some educational town halls coming up here in September that I'm excited about.
Awesome.
We're going to keep on pushing the message because awareness and education, awareness and waking up the public is how we put some brakes or put some sort of parameters around the Democrats' agenda. But I am worried because they've had they did all that, in a 2-month period. Yeah. Now they're literally going to, whatever it is, 7-8 months have to plan the next session. Yeah. I've heard some things, if you value life, like some of the things that if you've heard, like in Canada, they've legalized euthanasia, and that is rumored that that's going to be a top priority for Minnesota Democrats. So those are the kind of things, that we're looking for, that they do have ultimate control. And so what else, it's crazy, but just what are some of the other states or like I said, Canada, euthanasia, what are they doing? And the Minnesota Democrats, I believe, are going to try to do anything that they can this next session that they haven't already gotten through.
I'm sure. Absolutely. But I love the fact that you are doing those educational town halls because there's not much we can really do to pivot what they're going to do on their side, right? What can we do to stay empowered and do what is possible, right? And staying educated and knowledgeable about the topics and about what could come. And that actually kind of wraps into my next question, because one of the MOs of my show here, right? Maybe it's because I come from a coaching education background, but I like to always leave my listeners with some tips or some action items that they can do. And I'm getting the same questions from a lot of people across Minnesota, probably that you're getting, right? What can we do about this? And a lot of people, even feeling, once they're educated, I should say, feeling a little defeated and just like throw in the towel. There's not much we can do. And we want people to feel empowered and that it is possible to turn Minnesota around. So number one, going out and voting, right? We want to flip the House next time. 2024 is that next House election. So we need to make sure the public is knowledgeable about that, making sure they're voting for change. In addition to things like your town halls, what other things can we tell Minnesotans that they can do?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question, because I always want to leave people with hope and then, encouragement and action to do something. And
absolutely.
Here's the thing that, this is like, I really want people to think about this. Okay, write it down. We're in a psychological war. We truly are. And if you study that, what happens is, because they're very well funded, in the 2022 election, they outspent us something like 7-1. They're very good at what they do is kind of steal the language, steal words, and then kind of redefine words to make them mean whatever they want them to mean. But what it's all meant to do really is to silence us and to make us feel like we are alone and that, nobody agrees with us, that we're just kind of this crazy person out there thinking the way that we're thinking. Okay.
Yep.
So first of all, I want you to understand the psychology behind it is they are doing this very, very deliberately. Their marketing, their way of talking, the media. So really think about this. All of this is to make you feel like you're the minority and you're alone. Okay.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's very important to understand that factor. Once you understand it, then I want you to understand that we're actually the majority.
Yep.
This is very important because the majority of Minnesotans would not have voted for what this radical group just voted for this 2023 session.
Yeah.
Okay?
I agree.
And that's a fact. I mean, it doesn't matter that right now that they have more votes in the House and the Senate than us. What matters is that we have to believe and know that the majority of Minnesotans reject this agenda.
I agree.
We do not want to be far left, crazy radical liberals. We do not want to be, the next California up in Minnesota.
Nope, not at all.
No. And so, first of all, we have to understand they're trying to make us feel like we're alone and we're dumb. And then second of all, we have to understand this actually is a big lie. Mm-hmm. And we're the majority. And if you can get that mindset straightened out, then you have to get moved into action. Yeah. And you have to get bolder and braver, and you have to realize there are things that you can do. So, there's little things like you can do letters to the editors, you can call friends, you can just attend a school board meeting, just attend a city council meeting, do things locally, get involved, because all of these things you are out touching people. Mm-hmm. But what they want you to do is to sit in your home and to sulk and to think, oh, we're defeated. There's nothing we can do. And that is absolutely wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. What I just want to keep on encouraging people to do is understand our voices are being muted. Our voices are trying to be silenced. Yep. And so if you're aware of that, then we need to amplify our voices. Yeah. And we have to do anything we can to do that. So small things lead to big things. Mm-hmm. Consistency pays off in the long term. It's just, even if you're just doing something 10 minutes a day, okay. Yeah. Well, after a week, you just did an hour of productive things. But if you think like, oh, I just don't have time for that. I just don't have time for that. By the end of the week, you've done nothing. Exactly. So, I try to teach people just do little things every day because small things lead to big things. Social media, sharing posts, liking posts, any of that really does help. It really does help. And again, your job, the public's job is to amplify our message, but also to claim the message back that this is not us. And that we reject the radical agenda that has happened. So the devil, Satan wants us to be down. Satan wants us to believe that we can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And my advice is just, keep on saying, not today, Satan, keep fighting because because this is a battle of, good versus evil in my mind.
Yep.
And we have to strive for messaging and truth. That's what we have to get out there.
I agree. And number one, you could totally be a health coach. All those phrases you're saying, I'm like, oh, I say those to my clients all the time. But, number two, a thought that kind of hit me was for the general public. So like you said, call a friend or talk to somebody, right? So exactly, that's a small step, but it's actually a big step. And if you are talking to your friends, and approaching these topics, just challenge them almost like, give them a few of the initiatives that they push through on their agenda and ask them how they would have voted. And if they vote opposite of what the Dems did, be like, they didn't speak what the Minnesotans really wanted.
Right. Exactly. And one example, and I know abortion is just an issue that it can polarize people.
Yep.
But here's the thing is what the Minnesota Radical Democrats, Communist Socialists just voted in was the most extreme bill in any of the states in America. And we now have abortion to the point of North Korea and China.
Yeah.
So again, let's not get into the weeds. It's like, ask someone flat out, do you agree with an abortion at a third trimester?
Yep.
And if they say no, well, that's what the Democrats just voted for.
Yeah.
And again, watch what they say, not what they do. This is one of my favorites to tell people because in 2022, they campaigned on what abortion is women's health care, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was their slogan. Well, when we were seeing the abortion bill, okay, this might blow some people's minds that don't know this.
Yeah.
But when we were debating the abortion bill, the Republicans offered an amendment that said that, and I believe it wasn't even, I believe it was second trimester babies, not even first, but second trimester babies could only be aborted in a licensed facility.
Yep.
Because obviously that's a medical procedure. And if this is women's health care, shouldn't it be licensed?
Right. And you're talking about not just a small, essentially cell. It could be up to like a 6-inch baby.
I know. So remember, people, watch what they say, not what they do. They just ran millions and millions and millions of commercials saying, this is women's health care. This is women's health care. You hypocrites.
Yes.
They literally voted against having women have abortions in licensed facilities.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know your nail salons are licensed? Your hair salons are licensed in the state of Minnesota?
Yep.
Your tattoo parlor is licensed?
Yeah.
And your abortion clinics are not?
Yeah.
So explain that to me. And how is that women's health care?
Absolutely. I agree 1,000% when that went through. And I think you nailed it. So many people have zero clue about that. They don't know because they were saying that we're the ones talking about, you're putting us back to abortions with a coat hanger. And it's like, excuse me, we just pushed for safe. We wanted safe.
Right. When you are, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say, if you are so immoral that you run on women's health care, but you do not make our abortion clinics to be licensed, or you call the Republicans the extremists, and you try to say we want women to go in the back alleys and have abortions with coat hangers, and you actually have those vile things coming out of your mouth, but you just voted for the opposite.
Exactly. Literally.
You cannot support that party anymore. You cannot support people that so immorally lie.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
So again, it was like, to me, with the abortion issue, I am pro-life. And it's like most states went to things like a heartbeat bill.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing that we could have done that even European countries have in place.
Yep.
There is not one European country that allows abortion up to 40 weeks like the Minnesota radical Democrats just voted for. Not one.
Right. Well, and it was exactly, the things you're talking about with the making sure that they were in safe spaces. But in addition to that, like one thing that really got me, and, they are very good at changing words, changing vocab, and how they don't say baby, they say fetus, which whatever, fetus or not, when they said no, essentially no pain relief for these babies that were in the third trimester, I'm thinking to myself, how can any Minnesotan with a heart say that what they just passed through with that amendment is acceptable? That
exactly.
Talk about incredibly evil. Those babies are going to feel full out pain.
Right. We know this. We know third trimester babies can feel pain.
Yes.
And that was another amendment that the Republicans offered. And again, this is all public knowledge to your listeners.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can research the amendments. They try to call us extremists and crazy, and we don't care about women. And we had common sense amendments that were trying to bring something like the abortions just back to the middle ground that was humane.
Humane, yes.
But they called us the extremists, and the public believed it. Why? Because they outspent us millions of dollars. They outspent us. And so, again, the public of Minnesota was conned. The public of Minnesota did not want this. They did not want this radical agenda. And what we have to do is we have to wake up the public. And
I agree.
And again, I know it's difficult, but I kind of say this to people because I think they can relate to this. But, we're from Minnesota, so we have this little Vikings versus Packers thing, right?
Yep.
Okay. And if you're a Viking fan, even if you're losing, it's just like you just can't switch to Packers. And if you're a Packer fan, you can't switch to, cheering for the Vikings. You just can't do it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I want to say to Minnesota, this is not Vikings versus Packers.
Not at all.
This is too important. And at some point, when your party has become so immoral, so radical, so extreme, and just so blatantly lying to the public.
Yep.
I mean, well, not to mention, we haven't even talked about finances and the waste of money that's happening.
Yeah.
But that would be a different show. But I'm just saying, at some point, you can't justify anymore staying on your team.
Yeah.
This isn't Packers and Vikings.
Nope.
It's too important. And I would just say to all of your listeners that we have to do everything we can to try to wake up Minnesota, try to educate, and to try to get people to understand what's really happened. Because our state actually, we are Minnesota. I don't even know if people know this, but we are being talked about at a national level of how extreme we've gone.
Oh, yeah. We are literally their bellwether. Like, they're testing things out here.
Yeah.
And, exactly. You need to turn on, just some national news just for curiosity sometimes of how much are they talking about Minnesota. And the amount is way more than it should be, that's for sure. And it's not for good reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to flip the script here a little bit, just shifting gears. So with the theme of the show, Ramblings of an Addict, you and I already connected a little bit. So I know you've never really battled an addiction, but I'm curious because I think everyone, right? We have a hiccup or we have a holdback. Tell the listeners a little bit about, any hiccups or holdbacks that you've had that you've really pushed against and tried to fight through and what you've learned through that experience.
Yeah, that is a great question. And, Jen, I just want to say thanks again for inviting me on today and also for all that you do. I mean, really, you have taken your gift and you're reaching other people. And it's just so important, especially I know how difficult it is for people that are addicted. So I have not personally had an addiction, like you said, but I really do want to encourage people. For me, I kind of a little bit talked about this at the beginning, but I've had a very, very interesting life. I think God likes to give me very colorful things, and
I like how you said that.
I mean, that would be that would be a whole nother series we could talk about sometime. But yeah,
absolutely.
I've had quite a few things happen. I mentioned I had kidney cancer. But one thing, even going into my adult life, is I was always like, definitely, I know people will laugh, they won't believe this, but I was like deathly afraid of speaking in front of people. And then people are going to go, no. And I'm like, I actually was.
Right. Yeah. That is a real fear.
Yeah. And so like I was once, for my best friend, I was the maid of honor. I had to give the speech. I mean, literally to the point where it's like, I'm shaking, like I can't even talk coherently. I mean, in a room of whatever, 200 people. So I mean, that's scared. Like literally, I could not public speak in front of people. Okay. So God always kind of brings you through things. And when we had, our fifth child was just born, we moved to a new area, and my husband had said, we really should, one of us volunteer for our religious ed program at our church. And I knew he worked full time. I was a stay-at-home mom. So I just kind of felt like, well, I should probably do that. Well, I was going to teach 8th graders, and I was deathly afraid to speak to 8th graders. I mean, like the night before, I'm not, this is a true story. I think I got like an hour of sleep. This was speaking to 8th graders.
You know what, though? Sometimes those middle schoolers can be a lot.
Yeah, I know. So anyway, so the Lord brought me through, like, I learned how to speak in front of them. And then, and that was for many years. I was doing that. And then, I ended up getting involved in NORWACs. And even then I was still very afraid of speaking. Mm-hmm. But, I just was like, okay, I had to work through like, there was all these different things I had to do to get myself to do it. Like I had to have note cards. I had to like make jokes at the beginning. I'm like, oh, I've never done this before, and like try to be nice to me.
Yeah. You found your tricks.
Like, I mean, it was silly. And it was like, but then I spoke in front of 5 people. Then I spoke through 10 people. So the Lord just kept on working. And as my business grew and grew, obviously I improved greatly, but opportunities started to come up. Like I would have to coach,
Yeah.
So I would have to coach a group of 25 people. And then one time my company asked me to give the address like at a national conference.
Oh, wow.
I spoke in front of 1,000 people.
That is amazing.
So again, I'm not saying it didn't happen over time, but even what I'm doing today in public speaking today,
yeah,
like I look back and I just kind of laugh and smile. And I think, okay, if I wouldn't have said yes to religion, teaching religion,
right,
I wouldn't have said yes to NORWACs, and then I wouldn't have said yes to speaking more and more or to public speaking.
Yeah.
And it's been, I'm very, very aware of how my life has evolved.
That's amazing. Again, it comes back to those puzzle pieces, right? He just lays them out perfectly, and we may not even see a connection. And then years back, you look and you think, wow, that was amazing. Yeah,
I'm just very grateful. And I just, whenever I try to be like, if God wants me to do something, I try to be very obedient.
Absolutely.
And I don't always know why, but I'm like, okay, I'll walk through the door.
Yep, exactly. Oh, I love it. Talk about inspiring, and, ending here just on an inspiring note as well. Any final thoughts from you, Representative Pam, about, any final thoughts, any final messages you have for the Minnesota moms listening?
Yeah, I want to encourage everyone, honestly, we are living in history right now. We are living in history. And
Amen.
When you're right in the middle of it, it's hard to see it because you're up close.
Yeah.
Even right now, so back in COVID, think back to 2022. When we were in COVID, many of us were like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And you don't know because you're living in the moment, okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to work your way through. So just really have faith that God has this, that we're living in the moment. Sometimes it's hard to understand the present because we're right on top of it. I do believe we're living in history, but I also believe the pendulum has gone too far, and I do believe that people are waking up. So we really need people to believe that, and then to help us spread our word of message of hope and action, and help move people into, if we don't move into action, by 2024, we have to do this to change the direction of our state. So anyways, I hopefully I've given some encouragement, but as bad as I think it is right now, I also am very optimistic for our future. I'm very optimistic for our future. And if people knew the power that we had, everyone would get up, push back. The sooner we do that, the sooner this stops. Just like with masking. If we would have all, back in 2020, if we would have all refused to do the masks, it would have been done.
Yep, exactly.
So we have the power, and we just have to implement that power.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap things up. We do have the power. And I want to thank you so much, Representative Altendorf, for, number one, joining us today. But number two, what you're doing for the state, your dedication as you're serving Minnesota and truly advocating for freedom, like you were saying, is incredibly inspiring. Myself, and speaking for moms across the state and Minnesota as a whole, thank you so much for all of the hard work you're doing, as you truly are using your gift of your voice to stand up for us. May God continue to lay those puzzle pieces for you and continue to bless you and your family. And to the listeners, I want to remind you every single day, put on that armor of God and stand firm in your beliefs. Like Representative Altendorf was saying, stand formed. Make sure that you are staying empowered, knowing that you do have the ability to stand up. And let's all work together to make positive impact in Minnesota. Goodbye, and until next time, take care and God bless. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ramblings of an Addict with Jenna Dix. Remember, if you are battling an addiction, reach out for help and support. There are many resources available to assist in your journey towards recovery. Surround yourself with a supportive community and never give up on the path towards a healthier and happier life. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and joining me on this journey. As you heard, I'm always rambling. But seriously, thank you for your support and make sure to subscribe and follow my channel. I can't wait to share more with you on the next episode. Until then, keep on rambling. If you have found this podcast helpful and want to dive deeper into personal growth and self-improvement, be sure to head over to my website, jennadix.com. You'll find a wealth of resources there. There is a little less drugs, sex, and rock and roll these days, but whether you're interested in getting healthy, information on momming or parenting, or politics, jennadix.com has something for everyone. So, what are you waiting for? Head to jennadix.com today and start your journey towards personal growth and self-awareness. See you there.